Following the death of Saul in battle, the Israelites were left without a king, and the tribes were divided for a while. David became king of Judah, while the other tribes followed Saul's son Ishbosheth. Once Ishbosheth had been slain by his treacherous military commanders, the entire nation turned to David and made him their king, as we shall now read in 2 Samuel chapter 5, verses 1 to 5.
Then came all the tribes of Israel to David, to Hebron, and spoke, saying, Behold, we are your bone and your flesh. In times past, when Saul was king over us, it was you who led out and brought in Israel. Yahweh said to you, You shall be shepherd of my people Israel, and you shall be prince over Israel. So all the elders of Israel came to the king, to Hebron, and King David made a covenant with them in Hebron before Yahweh. And they anointed David king over Israel. David was 30 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 40 years. In Hebron he reigned over Judah 7 years and 6 months, and in Jerusalem he reigned 33 years over all Israel and Judah.
The people may have chosen David as their king, but they were, whether they realised it or not, only confirming what God had already promised him years earlier. David would go on to become perhaps the most famous king of Israel. He would reign for 40 years, first in Hebron and then in Jerusalem, and it was from his family line that the Messiah would eventually be born. Yet David points us forward to Christ in other ways as well. David wrote about Christ in the Psalms, and his life in many ways pictures Christ for us. David began his life as a shepherd, and Christ delighted to call himself the Good Shepherd, with us as the sheep of his pasture. David was a mighty warrior, but who can be a more mighty warrior than Christ, who is explicitly pictured as a warrior in Revelation? David is famous also for slaying the giant Goliath and working physical salvation for Israel from their enemies. Yet Christ overcame the giants of sin and death and provided salvation for us, the Israel of God. Of course, Christ is pictured in many ways throughout the Bible. It's in David we have some of the clearest depictions in Scripture. As we read his word, let us look forward, beyond the type, and see Christ, our mighty warrior, who, unlike David, lived a perfect life and triumphed over our enemies, overcoming them through his death in our place.